The terms of office of both PA Chairman Mahmoud Abbas and Prime Minister Olmert are drawing to a close. Despite this, efforts are underway to clinch a final status agreement. Here to provide analysis is Yoni Kapinski. Shalom, Yoni.
Shalom, Aaron.
All right, Yoni. There have been rumors floating around that Olmert is trying to reach a final deal with Abbas. Are these rumors true? And if they are, what would this deal entail?
Well, Aaron, Mark Regev, Olmert's spokesman, has confirmed that some sort of deal is being pushed by the Prime Minister. So there's no question that there's something in works. What remains unclear is what exactly has been promised, but any kind of final status deal would have to tackle the very problematic issues of the borders, Jerusalem, and foreign Arabs who want to immigrate to Israel en masse, destroying Israel's Jewish character.
Now, why is the government so desperate to reach a deal?
Okay, so there are several factors. The first and strongest is intense American pressure against Israel to make ever greater concessions to the Arabs. This is not new. This has been long been American policy to pressure Israel in favor of the Arabs. What has changed is the intensity, with 7 trips by U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice to the Middle East in the last year alone. A large part of the motivation comes from the fact that U.S. President George W. Bush is nearing the end of his time in office and his popularity is extraordinarily low. And President Bush very much wants to secure a legacy for himself, which he thinks he can get through a Middle East peace deal. The next factor is Olmert himself. The premier is, to a certain extent, under siege with a shaky coalition and multiple police investigations. The premier is hoping the media will strengthen his position if he can present some sort of peace deal. On the other end, Mahmoud Abbas leads Fatah. That's the dominant branch of the PLO, but the PLO is in decline and has been for some time being supplanted primarily by Hamas, but also by other more Islamic terror groups. And so Abbas needs to show he can get things done to show the Arabs that he rules and that Fatah should be supported rather than his Islamic rivals.
You mentioned Jerusalem. What exactly is the premier considering?
So first of all, it's important to mention that this is unclear, but what is known for sure is that Ehud Olmert wants at least a partial division of the city, maybe with some sort of deal to grant Jews access to the holy places in East Jerusalem. There have been reports that Olmert wants to bring in the so-called international community as advisors to mediate on how the city should be divided. This would be the EU and Quartet, as well as possibly Jordan and maybe the Vatican and Egypt. It should be remembered that all these countries and organizations have varying degrees of hostility towards Israel, either for reasons of real politic, like the EU, which views Israel as an irritant provoking the Arab states, and the Vatican, in whose eyes Israel is a theological impossibility. Now, Olmert has also talked about any agreement not taking effect for 1 to 5 years. This was originally suggested by the U.S., but it would be an effective method of binding Israel to a deal the Olmert government wouldn't have to enforce.
Now, let's say some sort of agreement is reached. Would future governments honor this deal?
Well, in truth, there's no way to know for sure what any government will do, but the answer is probably. It has to be remembered that the leader of the opposition and the next Prime Minister is Benjamin Netanyahu, and in 1996 he became Prime Minister following a campaign which focused on attacking the Oslo Accords, signed by his predecessor, Labour Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, which brought the PLO to Israel. But during Netanyahu's first speech before the Knesset, the then premier stated Israel had to keep its agreements and couldn't abrogate Oslo. Now, this statement doesn't sound that strange, but a centerpiece of Netanyahu's campaign was the numerous violations of Oslo by the PLO. Normally, violations of a treaty are enough to warrant abrogation. Now, the Likud chairman may surprise us and reverse the last 13 years of Israeli policy, but Netanyahu's track record in regards to upholding deals, even treaties he personally opposes, implies whatever Olmert agrees to will be with Israel for a long time.
Yoni, thank you very much.